Let's go.
Where's the microphone?
Oh, it's on you.
On you.
Oh, let's thank you. Go ahead. I'm going to say it by lane. Okay.
It doesn't matter you, Les, Mr. Brown, you don't care, right?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. We good?
Good.
All right. So, Mr. Brown, how you doing today?
I'm great. I am cancer-free, debt-free, and drama-free.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for this opportunity just to speak with you a little bit. I wanted to go back because I started reading something that you did years ago. Mm-hmm. I read your Les Brown's 7 Principles of Powerful Storytelling. And when I read it, I expected to see some of the information would be outdated. Mm-hmm. But to my surprise, and it was not. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, other information that I've encountered in other organizations mimics this information. Mm. So I wanted to talk to you about how you came up with this, and I want to start at the end of the book and then come back. And
okay.
The reason I want to start at the end is because...
Okay, but read each one out loud and so I can respond to it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, what I wanted to do is go to your conclusion, and in your conclusion, you talk about the biggest thing, biggest excuse that people have. And that was an excuse that I had. Les, I don't have a story as incredible as yours. How can I be as effective as you've been when I feel like I've had an average life? So what would you say to someone that says that to you?
A lady by the name of Marianne Williams. She wrote a book called Return to Love. Mm-hmm. She wrote a book about a book. It was about a book called Course in Miracles that she read and changed her life. Mm-hmm. And her whole speech is about the value she got from a book. There's a motivational speaker years ago. He gave a speech, and the title of the speech is called 3 Yards from Gold. Man sold a farm, and he was down on his luck. He sold the farm, guy who purchased it. He was out in the backyard of the farm and looked and saw something shiny, and it was gold. And he made a fortune off it during the time of the gold rush. You don't have to have a down and out story. You have many stories that people have that are very inspiring on how they got there, what they had to do. When you think about Kobe Bryant's story, whoever tells that story, that's going to be a very inspiring story. Luther Vandross, Tiger, what's his name?
Woods?
No, not Tiger Woods. Tyler Perry is investigating to do his story. So we are wired for stories, and there are stories that can be down and out stories. There are stories that are inspiring stories on how people overcame the odds. I have a friend of mine, her name is Pauline Ahi. You can see her on the internet. And I met her in the lobby of a hotel in LA. I was doing a seminar, and she's riding up on top of a device that was moving her around the hotel lobby. And because she doesn't have any arms or legs, and I was curious, I started following her, and she was on the phone, holding her head to the side. I said, "Hey, I've been following you. I want to talk to you." She said, "I'm on the phone." I said, "I know, but I still want to talk to you." And so she talked to me, and I said, "You got a voice. I mean, if you hear conducting business, you don't have no arms and legs and rolling around on this device here." I said, "There's no excuse." In fact, we did a seminar, and I asked people to lay out 10 major issues that they were facing. And I was going around the tables, and her table, I looked, and they weren't having conversations about it. And I said, "Hey, did y'all get the instructions?" I said, "Yes, we did." I said, "What happened?" They said, "Well, we wrote down the 10 things that we found challenging, but we asked Pauline, 'Where's your paper?' She said, 'I don't have any problems.'" And so they tore that paper up. And so there's so many inspiring, incredible things that are taking place in life, that stories that we observe, acts of kindness. There are so many things that I believe in this space where we are, that we need to have the opportunity to hear the stories that will lift our spirits, stories that will give us peace, stories that will help us to see the possibilities that wherever we are in life, it does not have to define us.
Awesome. I remember looking at her story, and it is fascinating. And I also remember that she said that when you said, "I've been watching you," she said, "I know."
Yes.
Because she's really used to people looking at her, but you saw not only her condition, but her possibilities.
Yes.
And she says that she's forever grateful for that. And even though I'm not in that condition, I have my own conditions, and I want you to know I'm forever grateful for you seeing in me what you see. So I think I hear you saying that we all have a story.
Of all types. And there are things that we see and observe that we can tell and create some value for the audience with that. I saw a man the other day, and he was homeless, but someone was crossing the streets, and they were kind of struggling, had a wheelchair, and this guy, even though here he is, down and out, homeless guy out there soliciting contributions so he can get some food, he stopped soliciting and to help this guy get across the street who was pushing in a wheelchair, and took the time to do that. So he forgot about himself and then focused on what can I do, even if my situation is not that bad, I'm going to help this guy out. And he could have missed, we don't know what number of contributions of people who came by and saw him and felt sorry for him and would have given him a contribution. So, and I followed him, and I gave him $20. He was happy. You think I gave him $100 or something, you know? But all around us, there are things that we see and observe that we need to share those things, particularly if it can help people to begin to reframe how they see themselves and how they see life.
Going back to the beginning of the book, 3 incredible principles that you talk about: distract, dispute, and inspire. People are using that in courses all over the world.
Yes.
Where did that, how did that, is that sometimes when I'm talking to you and we're in different classes, you'll ask everybody to just be quiet for a minute, and you say, I'm receiving a download.
Yes.
Is that where that came from?
Well, how we live our lives is a result of the story that we believe about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when someone is interrupted, they get out of the conversation that's going on in their head, and they're listening to whoever's speaking to them. Now, that person who's speaking, they have the opportunity to distract this person from their inner conversation and get their attention to listen to them, to listen to a story. And the story that the person who's speaking to them now can cause them to go into their imagination, as opposed to what psychologists call their self-explanatory style, the things that they tell themselves and how they're showing up in life, and now take them on a journey to a place in themselves that they can't go by themselves. One of the things that I think is very important, that when we think about the fact that we live in a culture where most people don't believe in themselves. Just imagine 12 years of so-called education, which is indoctrination. There are no classes on how to build self-esteem, how to find a sense of purpose and meaning in life, how to overcome the challenges of life. No classes on how to increase your sense of worthiness. I remember as a kid, I would hear constantly, Lord, I'm not worthy. And so what people do and how they show up in life is a reflection of what they feel that they deserve. So when the work that I'm doing and that you're doing and the speakers that we work with is distract people from the conversation they've picked up between the ages of 0 and 7 in the book called Learned Optimism by a gentleman who wrote this 26-year most exhaustive study on self-esteem. And he's from University of Minnesota, and he said the things that we learn, the conversations that we hear, the experiences that we have in the environment where we are, we pick up habits and behaviors and attitudes and our visions of ourselves that will follow us for the rest of our lives unless there is an interruption. And that's what we do when when we show up. We distract them from their current conversation in their head and things they picked up in life. And through strategically sharing a story with them, that they allow themselves to see themselves in the story, they become self-persuaded as a result of hearing your story or my story and decide, I'm going to make a different choice with how I've been dealing with my life. I'm going to go in another direction. There must be a better way.
I want to ask you about rehearsing, because some people think about rehearsing as, looking in the mirror and going over your speech several times. I
laugh at that. I hear that. People have been doing that for a long time. It's just like you can't proofread your own work.
Right.
If you write something, you need to have somebody else read it because you can't proofread it. You can't check your own stuff. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. When you're rehearsing in a mirror, then you have untrained eyes looking back at you. And that person looking back at you are not going to write you a check. Okay. So, just imagine people who play sports or run track, play football, or musicians, that they're going to go and practice in the mirror. It's not like that. There's a reason that when a team, when they have a losing season, they fire the coach. Because the coach can orchestrate and take a team to a place in themselves that they can't go by themselves, individually and collectively. So having someone who's experienced and have a track record of achievement, and they're where you want to go and want to be, you want to get some feedback from that kind of person because it can shorten your learning curve.
Absolutely, and I'm experiencing that, and I appreciate it. But you've never said this, but I almost, just instinctively, I feel like part of when you were really starting, I feel like your rehearsal was getting more opportunities to get in front of different groups, because you talk about speaking for free if you had to.
Yeah, that to me, speaking is a calling. A job is what you get paid for. A calling is what you're made for.
Yes.
That you love it so much, you do it for nothing.
Yes.
But you do it so well that people will pay you to do it.
Yes.
It's just what I do. And when you find something that's your calling, something that resonates with your heart and your soul, you never work a day in your life. And so, to me, I look forward. I could speak 7 days a week, and I used to, and travel constantly. But this stage of my life, there's something that Dr. Miles Monroe, who was my most famous student, he said, Les Brown, there's no success without successors. So I'm teaching people now how to create an experience with their story to transform an audience individually and collectively. The speaking industry has been governed and influenced for the most part by the Dale Carnegie course, which is a great course. And they teach, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. I teach, no. Find out who they are. Never let what you want to say get in the way of what your audience want to hear. And all thy getting, get understanding. So when I started speaking and giving out a needs assessment to find out what the client wanted, and then incorporated the things that they wanted around the stories, my story and other stories that I observed, it helped me to accelerate my growth and calling attention to myself, because that was different. Everybody else was giving a memorized speech and speaking from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There's some stuff I went through that Napoleon Hill didn't have to go through. He didn't know, because he had the complexion of connection, and I had the complexion of rejection.
I'm glad you said that, because something is happening right now. And you and I were in Fort Lauderdale a couple of weeks ago, and we had a chance to talk about, it was right around the election time. And I want to kind of connect something here. When you did your speech it was Dexter Yeager.
Yes,
the 30,000
in the Georgia Dome.
In the Georgia
80,000 people, yes.
80,000 people. What I want to highlight that I suspect, and I want you to please correct me if I'm wrong, but who were the other people that were being considered to speak? Didn't we have a Zig Ziglar at the time?
Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Robert Schuller, Jim Rohn, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, all of them. And Dexter Yeager, who brought me in, he didn't like me. He told me, I don't like you. And I've never had, and he just said it based upon his upbringing and his thinking at that time. I've never had a colored person speak on my platform. And so when he was talking to me, I was so glad I had gotten some coaching from my mentor, Mike Williams, who wrote the book called The Road to Your Best Stuff. There was one time in the conversation, he used the word Negro. And so Liberty City was about to come out. I'm about to say, you about to make me lose my mind up in here. And Mike said to me, Brownie, this man is going to test you. He's going to try and push your button. And he said, don't get angry. Anger is a wind that blows out the lamp of the mind. Yes. He was right, because when I went to talk with him and interview with him, he never talked about the business. All day long we argued and we went back and forth. Come to find out later is the Japanese approach. They don't discuss business off the top. They talk about you and find out where you are and what your values are and what you stand for and what you believe in. And here's a guy that's a redneck and a beer truck driver, but at this time he's making $1 million every 17 hours. And then like 45 minutes before it's time for me to go, then he talks about the business. But all that other time, he was testing me, and he never left my presence, and I never left his. He didn't go to the bathroom, I didn't go to the bathroom. We just looking at each other, okay? And here's a guy that had organizations in 26 different countries, but that was his style. And so I had an assistant with me named Angela. She was going back and forth, but we just sat there and we looked at each other, and we were just testing each other. He wanted to know where I stood. I wanted to know where he stood. We were like this, we came in, but we found out that we had more in common. He didn't like me, but he respected me and what I stood for.
And the reason I bring that up is because Walmart recently, without anyone asking them to, just dropped all of their DEI considerations for employment. But what I want people to see from the story that you just shared with us is, if we continue to craft our stories and dig into our messages and get better and better, we will be hired because we are the best, and not
we will not be hired because we're the best.
Why would we be hired?
You'll be hired is because they decide that they want to use you. Because the best don't always get hired. Okay. It's about the relationship that you have. And they've made that decision. All right? Now we have a decision. Yes. Do we still want to spend money with them? Agreed. If we stop spending money with them, they could call and say, can you come over? And so the thing is that this country has always created barriers that will prevent people from advancing that's not a part of the majority group. That's always, it's part of the DNA of this country. That's not surprising. So, but we have more tools and opportunities to not be fighting to go to a table, but to bring our own table, to build our own economy. There's a quote that I love very much, that in life you will always be faced with a series of God-ordained opportunities, brilliantly disguised as problems and challenges. When I was fired in radio, that was shocking to me, because I love radio and I was dominant when I did it. But had I not been fired, and all of us know that life is lived going forward, but we learn from it looking back. Had I not been fired, I would not be the person that I am now. A guy named Marion White said, in life, when you don't have enough courage or insight to know that you have outgrown a situation and it's time to move on, life will move on you.
Amen. One more thing about that Georgia Dome experience. It was fascinating to me as an aspiring speaker to know that you didn't want to come out of the bathroom.
No. I told Mike Williams, I said, I can't hear the voices. He said, they're stalling. I said, I don't care. I can't hear the voices. He said, what do you mean? I said, man, I'm scared. There's 80,000 people out there. So he said, Brownie, can you hear me? And I said, yes. He said, they came to see you. You didn't come to see them. I said, I still can't hear the voices. So he said, can you hear me? I said, why you keep on asking me that? He said, listen to me. He said, you're scared, aren't you? I said, yes. He said, do it for your mama.
Oh, he went there.
He went there. I said, don't use my mama on me. So once again, he distracted me from the fear.
Yes.
And I started thinking about it. He said, can you imagine when the neighbors hear that Mamie's boy spoke in the Georgia Dome, that she's going to be bragging about you? And then I started opening up the door. And so, yes, but I say to people, you're going to experience nervousness. I do now, and been doing this 53 years. But the nervousness means that you care.
Yes.
Each audience, they have their own personality. And some in the audience, there are audiences inside of each audience. Some looking for humor, some looking for information, some want to be inspired. And they're just people who will observe, who will not participate, just observe. And so what we train people to do is to unify their message to create a committed listening based upon creating an experience with the audience. That's major. If you just give them information, then you're not going to be able to transform them, because they can Google information. But in order to influence human behavior, you have to create a significant emotional event. That's where stories come in. It's a tool. We're wired for stories.
Yes.
And so they can make you laugh, they can make you cry, they can make you think, they can make you grunt, they can inspire you. And so that's the value of it. And I believe now more than anything that there's a saying, evil prevails when good men and women do nothing.
Yes.
That in spite of what's going on right now, there are a lot of people who are saying, no, you're not going to turn back the hands of time on us. No.
You won the highest honor in Toastmasters.
Yeah, the Golden Gavel Award, yes.
The Golden Gavel Award. And you also, through your training, produced a Golden Gavel Award winner.
Yeah, Dr. Shirley Davis, yes.
Do you know anyone else in history that's done that?
No. And I was selected among the top 5 speakers in the world by Toastmasters. General Norman Schwarzkopf, Robert Schuller, Paul Harvey, and Lee Iacocca, and me.
Yes.
I was the only raisin in that glass of milk. Only raised that glass of buttermilk, okay? And I got more votes than all of them combined.
Wow.
Yeah, and so the president of Toastmasters at that time, he said, man, this is amazing. And it's a difference between speaking to sell, you now look at people in the audience as a transaction, versus speaking to serve, to introduce people to a part of themselves that they're not familiar with right now, and that will challenge them to become, as I love to say, as Mother Teresa would say, a pencil in the hand of God, and start writing a new chapter in their lives.
I love that you said that we won't necessarily win because we're the best, but we need to focus on developing quality relationships.
The relationships are very important. 95% of speaking engagements as a result of a relationship. Somebody told Dexter Yeager, I saw this guy. Les Brown. You ought to bring him in. And that's why I got the phone call. So we know people who are very good
Yes.
that their phone will never ring
Yes.
because people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's not true. It's who you know and what they know about you.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a reputation that's favorable with somebody that you know that's in a position of influence, they're not going to take your call. So you have to, your reputation goes before you. And so you have to take into account the people who are going to refer you and their standing in the minds of the person who will listen to them.
The second principle that you have listed is the listener's journey.
Yes.
Can you share with me?
That when we speak, that it's very important that we listen to the listening of the listeners, because they're going to respond, they're going to grunt, they're going to laugh, they're going to get silent based upon what you're saying. And so most people, because they have a memorized script, they're just trying to recall that script and be on point. But I teach speakers to have the versatility and flexibility to speak from value points. Never make a point without a story. Never tell a story without a point. So that you are able to create a committed listening, and the goal and objective is to ignite want to power, where people want to as a result of hearing you saying you have the power to live your dreams. Now they want to go after that dream based upon how you delivered that message, and you took them to a place in themselves that they can't go by themselves.
I just want folk to know that, again, this book is called The 7 Principles of Powerful Storytelling, and you are noted as arguably the best speaker that we've ever had. But it's not really talked about how much of an effective teacher you are. And this material is being used even today. And how do you feel about that? How do you feel?
Humble, because I love this so much. Usually if somebody knows how to do something well, they don't know how to teach it. And so, but I've been blessed to have a very good instructor, but that this is who I am, that I study it even now at 80. I'm still taking in quotes, I'm still learning new things, I'm still looking at different ways when I'm teaching and training people in the class that don't just tell the story, go there, experience the emotion that you went through at the time that you faced that, how you handled that. That when you were talking with people, they're asking themselves, does he believe this? Is this something that she's just talking about or something that she knows? So when you speak from a place of knowing that you're able to create in the mind of people, they don't buy from you, they buy into you based upon your passion, the power, and energy. You have an energy signature that causes people to respond to you, be on the edge of their seats, give you a standing ovation, because they are now acknowledging that you have brought them to a place where they have an expanded vision of how they see themselves and how they see life.
So it is very intentional, and I know this from even you drawing things